recorded. Don't do anything you don't want your mama or your babies to say. We say that every single week and we mean it. All right, so I am extremely happy to have these two special guests today, because these two are dear friends. And thank you for joining us, because Dr. Stephanie Lewis, who's an associate professor with the MSM program, and Dr. Courtney Baggett, who's the director of the risk management and insurance program here at Troy University, they're going to tell us what we need to know to thrive as future professionals about professionalism in the workplace, both online and face-to-face, such as how do we write a formal email, how do we dress in the workplace, and what are the do's and the don'ts. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Lewis and Dr. Baggett so they can take it away from here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Stephanie Lewis, as Dr. Waldner just mentioned, and I am an associate professor and graduate faculty in the School of Nursing and the College of Health and Human Services. I've been a nurse for over 30 years, and I've been in higher education for about 17 years now. Again, really appreciate you being here today, and I want to assure you all that if you're just starting your professional career or will be soon, we have all been where you are. I even think you're a little ahead of the game, because clearly you know the right questions to ask, like what is professional behavior for the workplace? And more likely, the question is, what is not professional behavior for the workplace? I will let my partner introduce herself now and begin the presentation. Dr. Baggett?
Okay, thanks, Dr. Lewis. Hey, everybody, I'm Dr. Baggett. I'm an assistant professor in the College of Business, and I teach risk management and insurance. A year ago, I became the director of that program, and so as part of my responsibilities in that role, I actually supervise a lot of interns, and I help students find full-time placements once they graduate. So I get to hear a lot of really great stories about things that happen on internships and what my very new professional former students are doing at work and what kinds of things they're seeing. So I went to Troy as an undergrad student, and I graduated from Troy in 2012. So while I was there, I was an intern. I had never really traveled before, had never been to a fancy restaurant. So a lot of those awkward things that you all are probably thinking about, I went through myself not that long ago. So I hope that you ask any questions that you have, and I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So could we hit the next slide, please? Great. So we are going to split this presentation. Dr. Lewis is the online expert, as I like to say, and so she's going to handle the virtual portion, which will be the latter half of this presentation. I'm going to do the face-to-face part. That's primarily where I teach and where I interact most with students. The three areas that I'm going to focus on in the face-to-face will be the interview process, some easy success strategies, as well as social events that typically happen outside of the office place. So think like golf tournaments or Christmas parties, networking events. And then Dr. Lewis is going to focus on email etiquette, how to conduct yourself in an online meeting, as well as appropriate dress. Okay, so for the first part of the face-to-face, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking to you about the interview process. I know that this is a really intimidating thing to go through. It's still intimidating for people who have been professionals for 20 or 30 years. I don't know many people who really love to interview, but there are some techniques that you can use to make yourself a bit more settled. I can't tell you how many mock interviews I have done with my own students where they come in dressed, ready to go, and I basically give them a fake interview. I think that really settles your nerves. So if you have a teacher or a friend or a parent who's willing to do that with you, that would be one way to work out some of the little kinks that will inevitably pop up as you're interviewing. So if we have students in the room and you can access your chat box, could you quickly tell me whether or not you've had an internship before? And I'm just going to let that run and continue talking, and maybe we'll get some responses. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is your presentation when you're going to interview. And when I say presentation, I don't only mean the way that you're dressed, though that's certainly a big part of it. I also mean really basic things like, do you look disheveled when you show up? You know, did you brush your hair today? Are your fingernails clean? Things that most people probably would not have to think through. You know, those are noticed when you show up to do an interview, just as first impressions. Attire does play a part here, though, and I think in a face-to-face setting, it is a bit different than it is online. So I have listed under here the shirt story. I had a former student several years ago. She was bright. She did an interview, and the person who interviewed her called me afterward, and he said, you know, I don't really know how to tell you this, but I feel like it's something you would want to know. If we had wanted to extend her an offer, we would have to have a really serious conversation with her about the way that she was dressed. And I was pretty shocked when they told me this because I knew this student. I saw her in class all the time. I had never really seen her wear anything inappropriate. He said, you know, her shirt was so low that when I was conducting the interview, the entire time I was consciously trying to avert my eyes so that I didn't make her feel uncomfortable by looking at her. She did not get that job, though I don't think that the shirt was really the reason. But make sure that you're wearing something that you're comfortable in. Don't wear anything too low. Don't wear anything too short. I like to tell my students, you know, we're not talking like your best attire on Friday night. We're talking your best attire, you know, if you're going to church with your grandmother. If your grandmother thinks it's immodest, then you probably should not be wearing it to an interview. And truthfully, you're not going to feel very comfortable if you're walking around and sitting in chairs if you're not wearing something that is, you know, pretty modest. I will say that, ladies, it is just tougher for us to find, you know, appropriate fashionable clothing than it is for most male students or young male professionals. For my male students, the thing that I usually see is that they may show up with really wrinkly clothes, and you know, they make Downy spray, they make steamers. That's just part of presentation. I mean, you want to look like you're put together and like you actually put some effort into getting ready before you showed up for this interview. The next thing that's really important for an interview is being on time. I like to think of punctuality as a very quiet way to let people know that you are mature and you're serious. Being respectful of their time is very important, and it takes like zero effort to show up on time. I mean, you don't have to be super smart. You don't have to be the best to be punctual. I had another student who several years ago was scheduled to have an interview. And there were several executives that were going to be in this interview because they were looking at him for a full-time position. The student had a legitimate emergency. There was an issue with his animal. He had to take it to the vet, but he never called in to reschedule the interview. He never called in to let anyone know what was going on. So all of these executives are sitting here in the office. They had driven in from branch offices, and they're waiting for hours. And so finally, someone calls him, he answers the phone, and he just very nonchalantly explains, well, he had an emergency, so he couldn't come in. It wasn't about the emergency. They would have gladly rescheduled the interview for him, and it would have been perfectly fine because we're all human and people have flat tires and they have sick kids and things like that. But he should have really immediately called as soon as it was reasonable. Like as soon as he got to the vet, sat down, he should have thought to call someone and let them know. And that's just part of being respectful of everyone's time. Okay, so I see a comment in the chat. It says, when I was getting started, I often heard early is on time. On time is late, and late is unacceptable. I really like that. When I was an intern in a new city, I actually scouted out the building first the night before so that I knew where it was. I would show up early and I would go to the bathroom and just wait until it was time for me to walk into the office, because you also don't want to show up and be out of breath because you've had to run up the stairs or you got in traffic. I mean, make sure that you're there with enough time that you can calmly start your interview. And the last thing here is just being prepared. Do a little bit of homework about the company before you actually show up. Okay, next slide, please. Now, as part of evaluating my interns over the summer, I actually ask the employers to send in comments about their performance. And so sometimes it's about what the intern could have done better. Other times, and more often, it's actually about really strong attributes that that student had. So these are just a few of the things that I pulled from those comments. Don't speak negatively about anyone in the office. You don't want to be labeled, an office gossip or someone who's mean or difficult to work with. I think that something interns and young professionals really struggle with is learning that an office friend is not the same thing as a friend. And just because you get along with someone well at work does not mean that you should say bad things about other people to that person. Anything you say in the office, you should just assume is going to be shared with the entire office. If you set yourself a goal of just being easy to work with, you have 80% of the battle won. People who are easy to work with are the types of people that everyone likes to teach. I mean, I would much rather have someone who doesn't know it all, but has a good attitude and is really, there to learn and train that person than someone that may be a bit more difficult to work with. So just having a good attitude, being humble is very important when you're starting in a new role as well. Be respectful of everyone and try to express some interest in what it is that you're doing. So a lot of my interns, they'll say, well, I ran out of things to do, so I just started walking the hallways and asking people, hey, do you have anything for me? Or what are you doing? Are you busy? Do you mind if I sit with you and just watch what you're doing? That goes so far. It also helps you pass the day faster, but you get to learn a lot more about what other areas of the company may be like, as opposed to just doing the same thing every day. Be very, very cautious about what you put on social media. I would say that now more than ever, not only what you currently post, but what you may have previously posted is going to be monitored really closely. I know that employers check your social media accounts because they tell me before they ever bring you in for an interview. But if you have an account that may not be the most honorable in the past, years ago, delete the post, delete the account, start over, and just make sure that you're putting things on there that are kind to people. Don't be ugly on social media because it will follow you. Have a positive attitude, be engaged. One of my biggest pet peeves is being on your cell phone when you're in the office. I really can't think of what irritates people more than when they're trying to teach an intern or teach a new employee and that person is on their phone. I know that it doesn't seem like that big of a deal to a lot of students, but you have to think that you're probably training with people who are not as dependent on their cell phone as you may be and don't use it as often. And so it does seem a bit like you don't value their time because you're too busy playing on your phone. So put that in your desk, leave it in your car, just don't be on it. And then the last two are just to develop good relationships and be very responsive when people ask you to complete a task. Okay? All right, this is my last slide, and I think it's the most important one. So social events that take place outside of the office. I'm in risk management and insurance, and in the insurance world, we are very social beings. So there are a lot of deals made over golf courses and going out to drinks and having dinners. There are a ton of networking events, and at all of those places, alcohol is readily available. So my students are exposed very, very early to social settings where there's plenty of free alcohol. Some people don't drink. And if you don't drink, I hope you never, ever, ever feel like you should so that you fit into this social event. You should never feel uncomfortable having, a club soda with a lime if you want to look like you're having a drink. Or if you don't, just, have a Coke or have whatever you would normally have. But don't ever feel pressure to drink because of where you're at. If you do drink alcohol, whatever you think you could drink, I like to tell especially my male students, drink like a fifth of that amount. Make sure that there is no chance at all that your behavior is going to be altered by the amount that you've drank. I have a 1 drink rule. If you're in a social setting, a drink is enough for anyone and then switch to Coke. There's just no reason to get yourself into a bad situation. I will tell you that not one of my students, okay, the previous stories were about my students, but not this one. So this was a different student, but I have become close friends with many of the people that handle the interns at these companies. And so this person was sharing this story with me. It was a very, very bright student. Was at the top of the class in this particular year. And that student went with several executives at the company to take clients out to golf. And they were on the golf course all day. They were drinking all day. The intern didn't have anything to eat. And then once they were finished golfing, there was another client party where they were taking people out to dinner. So they joined them where there was even more alcohol. And so the executives there were drinking, and the intern continued to drink. One could argue that those executives were also at fault, and they should have been watching that intern a little bit more closely. But that intern had so much to drink that ultimately he said something and did something that was so inappropriate that he lost his job. He was one of the top candidates, and he was essentially blackballed. I mean, everyone knew this story as soon as it happened. It was not in his nature at all to say or do what he said and did. But, alcohol makes you do really crazy things. So I would just very, very strongly encourage you not to drink or to have, a minimal amount of alcohol if you're ever in a social setting. Okay, and that's all that I have for you for the face-to-face stuff, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. I'll turn it over to Dr. Lewis now.
Thank you, Dr. Baggett. That was a great overview of just some of the more prevalent issues in being professional at the beginning of your career and situations that can arise. And like we said at the beginning, we've all been through stuff like this, and we've been through it successfully and not so successfully. And the end result is to learn from your experiences and go forward and do a little bit better. I am, as Dr. Baggett said, I teach online. I work almost exclusively online. My students are online. And so I am going to talk a little bit about online etiquette. And the first thing we're going to talk about is email etiquette. A lot of business takes place via email. And I know students and young adults, they don't typically, email is not their go-to communication method. But in the workplace, it is very prevalent. And believe it or not, there are some pretty strict do's and don'ts for emails, but it's also an art. Dr. Waldner is excellent at constructing emails, and she manages to put together vital information, but also communicate a tone of respect and excitement and engagement. And that is where the art is. Yes. Oh yeah, I take my pay in chocolate. Thank you. So there are advantages and disadvantages to email. One of the advantages is you have the ability to work on many things at the same time. I have several committees and work groups right now, and we're doing all of our work online via email. So we'll send out revisions of drafts and ideas and communications, and so it is very efficient. Email is. You also have the option to respond immediately or later, and you can document share, which is very helpful when you're trying to manage a project, get to the end line, and with a group. Disadvantages. There are disadvantages to email. Volume. I know anyone who is in a professional position, you know what I mean, and the volume of email can be overwhelming. And so you have to find a way to manage it. Whatever suits you best, whether it's folders, whether it's strictly checking your email twice a day, once at the beginning, once at the end, and then not look at it so you can get things done. But volume can be a disadvantage to email. And then here's probably the most important or most obvious disadvantage. You need to know that tone is very difficult to communicate clearly. So as a result, humor doesn't translate easily in email, and I am all about humor. I love to laugh. I love things that make me laugh. If situations are bad, I want to laugh. And so I have learned that my humor is not always somebody else's humor, and it definitely doesn't come across in email. So when you start communicating professionally via email, skip the humor for a while and until you kind of get the hang of it and can get your message across effectively. Emojis in this day and age really help. If you want to crack a joke, you put the laughing emoji next to it, and that helps communicate that it was indeed a joke. But again, there's different levels of joking that you can do with different people. So I don't necessarily joke when I send an email to the dean. I might joke in an email to my director, and I frequently joke in emails to colleagues if we're working on something. So there's kind of that formal, informal, and then casual type of levels of email communication. My biggest pet peeve on emails, and this goes back to the volume disadvantage, are people who reply all unnecessarily. So for instance, I'm going to tell a story on the School of Nursing. We received an email from our administrative assistant today asking for academic planner orders. So if we wanted the school to purchase an academic planner for us for 2021, to let her know. Well, you wouldn't believe all the people who replied all. I want one. Thank you, Linda. I'll have one. Great. And it was just like my email was ding, 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 ding when it didn't need to be. And so that is my personal pet peeve. And so how do we utilize email to do our jobs and advance our careers at the same time? I've embedded a video here, which I believe is going to play soon. And it's a 5-minute video, but it's very helpful. I learned things on there. And after it finishes, we'll have a discussion about which tip you thought was most helpful and if you have any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, and Dr. Velarde is queuing up that video.
Most of us know how to send an email, but when you go from college to the professional world, there are different rules and expectations associated with it. Poor email etiquette can actually sabotage your professional career. So what are some tips in order to make your emails better and more professional? Hi, I'm Adriana Girdler, president of Cornerstone Dynamics and an efficiency expert. And in this video, I'm going to share with you some tried and true techniques that are going to assure that your emails rock. Avoid reply all in most cases. Reply alls can be the bane of existence in corporations. They just clutter up the inbox. Really think long and hard when you are going to be replying to an email. Only reply all if people truly need to know the answer. But besides that, just reply to the person who needs to know. Include a subject line that is relevant and descriptive. We can get hundreds of emails in our inbox, so how do we know which one to go to? That is really important. Be specific. One of the techniques I use, if I have an action for someone, I'll literally put bold in my subject line, action needed, and then a very specific aspect of what it is I need. Or if it's something that's urgent, I'll go urgent. So it pops out. You really want to be specific to let your email stand out from the rest. Add email addresses last. I'm telling you this one from experience, all right? And you do not want to go through this, but we've all had at one point in our careers sent an unfinished email to someone, or we actually sent an email to the wrong person because they had the same name, and we all know with emails, pops up because we get really busy and a name pops up when we send it. Do your email addresses last. It allows you to reflect on what you wrote. You can then put in the people's name properly, and you're not going to have that problem of sending an unfinished email accidentally or the wrong email because you finally had an opportunity to read it and didn't like what was read. Respond promptly. Okay, so I usually say within 24 hours is the golden rule. It is really aggravating when you send an email out to someone and they don't reply back. You may not have the answer right away, but even the courtesy of just saying, got it, I'll get back to you, I need more time, is huge. It shows how professional you are, and it's very much appreciated. Never insult anyone in an email. Never, ever, 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 ever. No, don't do it. Now, you may be saying that's a given, but you will be surprised when you're in the moment and you're angry and upset and you read an email off, you feel better, but emails are paper trails and someone will forward that email and you do not want to have that around. Just don't do it. Don't insult people. It is not worth it for your professional career. Write a clear and concise message. Get to your point immediately in the email, bullet it, because what happens is most people are scanners. So if you have this long-winded email and you buried information within it, no one's going to get to it because they don't know. Be clear and concise. And if you actually go into a very long email, really consider putting it as a Word document or an Excel, whatever your information is, as an attachment. So therefore, your email now becomes more action-oriented, and then they can look at that attachment in order to get the detailed information. Out of office alert. It is really important that when you are away for a period of time, whether that's vacation, a business trip, or you're not going to be really able to reply back to an email as quickly as you want within that 24-hour rule, put an out of office alert on your emails. It allows people to know that you're really busy and you're not going to be able to respond to them. It gives them the information so that they're not wondering, and allows you to be the professional rock star you are because you're being courteous and kind. Know when to pick up the phone. Email is awesome, but not everybody checks their email every day. And in fact, based on the efficiency world I tell people to only check their email in the morning and at the end of the day. So really know when to pick up the phone. If you have a meeting cancellation, call people and let them know. If you have bad news, don't deliver it in an email. Do it one-on-one. Know when to use an email and know when to pick up the phone. Label your attachments. So you're sending out an email, you have quite a few attachments with it, label them properly. Don't leave them in the file name that they originally were slated in. So if it is a picture and it's called JPEG-1, change it to what exactly it is. Because when you have a slew of attachments, you may not know exactly what is going to be when you open it. Now, part of that is in the body of your email with the bullet point. Literally say and label what the attachment is and give a brief description so people know which one they need to go to first. Regardless of the communication that you're using, proper etiquette will never go out of style. Tell me what you think. Write email etiquette rocks in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe to my channel, pass this along to your friends, family, and colleagues. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you at the next video. Bye.
Stephanie, I believe you're muted. I apologize. In the meantime, I'll cue up your wonderful PowerPoint.
My apologies. It's better to be muted and talking than to be unmuted and other sounds happening in the background, which we're going to get to here in just a second. So first of all, I want to say I don't have any affiliation with that woman. I just found her tips to be incredibly relevant and useful and specific. So I hope you did too. One of the cardinal sins of emailing that I commit way too often, my emails are too long. I have really tried to work on that, and one of the things that I do, she had recommended, which is using bullets. And or even if I'm working with a student who needs a lot of structured guidance, I might use numerical order. One, do this first, do this second, do this third, just so my emails are relevant, clear, and concise. So which of the email etiquette tips was most useful to you, or maybe one that you didn't hear about? Is anyone willing to share, either in the chat box or unmute and share with us? That's okay.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Hi, I'm sorry. What I hate is when you email someone and they reply to you, and then if you need to discuss something with them later, that person continues to use that same email that has nothing to do with it. That bothers me. So I make an effort that when I respond to my instructors' emails, that I try my best not to reply on an email that had nothing to do with it.
Thank you for sharing that. That is a common experience, and it frustrates me as well. Sometimes in these groups I work with, there are, 30 different emails in that same thread, and it can get very confusing, or someone may even reply to or forward your email to somebody else with a different question that has nothing to do with the subject line. We call that hijacking emails. And so that's a huge problem as well. Any others? Well, thank you for sharing that. And I want to leave you, I've included more rules of email etiquette on this slide for you, such as don't write in all caps, never, ever, ever, unless you really mean to yell at somebody electronically. It's just not a good idea. Always respond, even if you don't have time to really do what the person is asking you to do. Just a quick response that says, received, I'm going to work on this tomorrow and I'll get back with you. It means a lot, because sometimes you send those emails and it's just out into never, never world, right? And you don't know if somebody's received it, whether you put in the wrong email address, which we've all done before. So think about, because I know it's happened to all of us, how did you feel when there was no response to an email you sent? It's very disconcerting and stressful too, if something you need to work with somebody to get something done by a deadline. So always be the person who responds, even if you have to say, I don't have time to look at this now, but I will very soon. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so online meetings. I know we can't, I guess we can raise our hands electronically here, but I'm assuming everyone has been in an online meeting, lots of them recently. We're in one right now. And you've probably experienced this as a student, and you might be ready to experience this as a professional. And so what I want to communicate to you is online meetings can be as productive as face-to-face if some simple rules are followed. So I have another short video, and if any of you have been in online meetings, you will hear and see many things in this video that ring true, and it kind of highlights the common frustrations of online meeting. But we're also, after we watch it, we'll discuss what was good behavior and what was not so good behavior in the online meeting.
Trip Crosby
has joined the meeting. Beth has joined the meeting.
Hello?
Tyler?
No, this is Beth from ICS.
Oh, hey, Beth. How are you doing?
Oh, good. Yeah. Just making it,
Tyler?
Has joined the meeting.
All right, well, this is Trip. Who's here?
Tyler's here.
Beth's here.
Okay, the purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the...
Yeah, I'll be able to do it in like 30 minutes. John?
Has joined the meeting.
Hi, John.
Hi.
I was just trying to go over the purpose of today's meeting, which is to discuss the
Tyler?
Has joined the meeting.
Sorry, guys, I got cut off. Is Paul here? Send him an invite.
Put in your access code.
No, that's your PIN number.
It should be a 9-digit number.
Try pressing the pound key. Paul.
Has joined the meeting.
Any questions before we move on?
Yes, this is Beth. What's our best plan of attack for the second quarter?
I
Question
think what
actually...
we should do.
Oh,
Go ahead. Oh, I think.
Well,
what we should do
it
is
actually
really
depends on
diversify
how you look at it. Because
and
the
really come.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I think
Given
what we-
sales,
what we
we're at
really-
a.
I think
Let me just say that
Okay.
that's a great graph, John. Tyler?
Well, my main concern with the projections from last year was that they're just insufficient. I mean, they're not even taking into.
Did we lose Tyler again? Hello?
John, are you guys taking distributions? John?
Oh, my bad. I was on mute. Let me start over.
So I've prepared a presentation. I'm sharing it with all of you. You should be able to see it on your screen right now.
Got it.
I don't see a link anywhere.
It says I need to download a plugin.
We are all using Macs, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
How can you?
Financials are looking great. Paul, do you have any comments on staffing?
I was thinking about that because we get a few more contractor types in. Hold on, I'm sorry.
Rex, get down.
I don't know. I feel like when I look at the numbers last quarter, that could really go different. So if we were to really tighten that up, then I don't.
To me, staffing is a huge impact. Is that me? Is that me?
That's not me, I don't think.
I just want to go over a couple of details as we move into our next section here. We got 3 new departments coming on.
Break it up a little bit, guys.
By the end of Q3.
Driving to a
So
dead
I need
spot.
everyone to give me detailed evaluations each
Sorry,
month
guys.
so that we know. That's it, guys. Beth, you'll send out a recap email that could have basically taken the place of this whole meeting, correct?
Yep, always do.
Yeah, thanks for doing that, Beth. Dave, you been here the whole time? Yeah. Huh. Well, thanks everyone once again. Oh, one more.
Okay, so that was a little silly, but it was, I saw Dr. Baguette laughing, I saw a couple people nodding. Yeah, too close to home, exactly. And so what did you think? Did you see behaviors or things that didn't need to take place, were not helpful, were not productive? What stood out to you all? Well, I'll go ahead and mention what stood out to me, which was one of the only examples I saw of good online conference behavior, and that is the woman, Beth, every time she spoke, she identified herself, because some of us aren't very good with voices. And so to say, this is Stephanie, and then add your comment is very helpful to the group. It lets them know who is saying what. The other thing that was highlighted in that video is the importance of letting the person who is in charge of the meeting run the meeting. Typically, people will, if they're running a meeting, will introduce the topic, start off with a few comments, and then open it up for comments. And at that time, you can chime in. And yes, you may chime in at the same time as somebody else, but it gets worked out. It's one of the frustrating parts. You can't really see, unless you're on webcam, somebody starting to talk. So it is a part of our world now, like it or not, and there are definitely do's and don'ts. If you could advance to the next slide, please. So, some other online meeting do's and don'ts. Do dress professionally, especially if it's going to be, if you know people are going to be on webcam. So do I dress like this normally at home when I'm working? No, not usually. I usually have on my favorite t-shirt and a pair of shorts, and but for meetings where I know the cameras are likely to be on, I make sure I've showered and I've done my hair, put on makeup, and I put on something remotely professional looking. Do ensure a distraction-free environment. I have dogs. They are the biggest distraction in my environment, hands down. Some of you may have small children. They can also be a distraction. So do your best. Now, I can't say, put the kids outside like I do my dogs sometimes during meetings. That may not always be good, but do your best to be focused and have your attention on the topic at hand. Do ensure properly working apps, video, audio, Wi-Fi to the best of your ability. This could mean doing what Dr. Waldner did with both Dr. Baguette and myself, which was to do a dry run, just to kind of see what our weaknesses, audio and video related, that we had, and we tried to resolve them then before the presentation today. Do review your open tabs and desktop icons for appropriateness. There is a share screen function. So if I am leading a meeting, I may want to share an agenda, and I have that agenda pulled up in a tab on my computer, and I go to share screen. Well, I may also have a tab open for Amazon or, things that are not work related. And so, and while not completely inappropriate, there are some very inappropriate tabs that are open when screens are shared. So just be aware of that. And likewise for your desktop. At times we have to share our desktop for one reason or another, and so make sure the picture on your desktop is appropriate, make sure the icons on your desktop are appropriate, and you'll avoid a lot of sticky situations. So here's some don'ts. Don't eat on camera. Dr. Baguette and I were recently in a meeting together, and we knew we were doing this presentation, and this was one of the ones that we both agreed on that we should communicate to you, because somebody we were in the meeting with was having an afternoon snack, which is fine, but don't have your camera on. If you're going to do that, don't have your mic on. Have it muted if you are going to be eating or gulping or talking to somebody in the background or yelling at your dog like that guy did in the video. So be aware of who can see what and hear what when you're in a meeting. Don't chew gum on camera. Most of us are not very attractive when we chew gum. And to have, you can see me right here, and maybe if I was even a little closer to the camera like I am sometimes, and chewing gum is just not a good look on anyone. And don't work on something else while you're on camera. I'm not saying it's never appropriate to multitask while you're in a meeting that maybe you just need to listen to, you're not so much participating in, but when you're on camera and you're doing things like this or this, it becomes clear to everyone else that you're not engaged. And so that's a big tip for you. Again, the camera is key. If the camera is on, you should be acting and looking like you do in a face-to-face meeting. Next slide, please. Okay, so professional dress for online work. Basically, dressing appropriately to work from home and professionally will give you the same motivation as when you dress for and are in the office. And I do, I like putting on nice clothes. It does make me feel more engaged with my work because it makes me feel like I'm in the office, even though I'm not. And again, back to a lot of meetings encourage the use of webcams. So don't be this guy down at the bottom. And I don't know if you can see that, but the ribbon is in my way. But this is actually, for those of us old enough to remember, this is Christopher Reeve's son. You might remember Christopher Reeves played Superman in the movies, and he is being interviewed in this picture on the Today Show, which is a national news show, about, I believe it was about a charity that he's involved with, something very important to him that he was wanting to get the word out about. And as you can see, he's dressed very professionally with his button-down shirt and his jacket, but it is clear in the picture on the right that he has boxers or shorts on with that button-down shirt and jacket. And so you've got to not only make sure that you're appropriate when the camera is on, but be sure about what is being seen in the background. You know, if I was back further and I had on a pair of shorts instead of, you know, a pair of slacks, you all would be able to see that, and that wouldn't be so appropriate. And I'm sure he was so embarrassed, but I just think it's kind of endearing. We're all kind of going through that right now with all of our online meetings. But again, you don't want to be that guy. So that concludes our presentation this afternoon. I know Dr. Baggett and I will be happy to take questions if anybody has one.
I think this is a wonderful set of information and tools you've given us. I haven't thought of some of these myself. I'm taking notes saying, oh my goodness, I could do that as well. This is a wonderful, both a starter set and an advanced set of tools. So thank you for that. Yes, if everybody, feel free to either unmute and ask your questions to Dr. Baggett and Dr. Lewis directly, or you can type them in the chat box. So what kind of questions do you have based on what you've learned here today? Or what points, what 1 or 2 points you're going to try to take home with you, take home points? Erica. Sorry, I'm not sure if she's trying to unmute or if she just popped up on the camera. Hey.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Hey, how are you? Thank you, ladies. You got. I thought this was one of the most fun presentations because I laughed out loud. The videos were hilarious, especially the video of the conference calls because I'm involved in those every day. Every scenario resonated with me and I couldn't stop laughing. So, so what I'm going to start doing though is I'm guilty of multitasking on camera. I'm also guilty of extremely long email messages. So I am going to now be more cognizant, bullet point, and attach a document. So if they're interested, usually I'm trying to get a point across. I'm very long-winded. So I thank you for that. That was really good. I enjoyed it.
Same. I have the same weaknesses, so to speak, on emails, and I'm working on it. It's a process. So anybody else? Somebody said the progressive commercial is a prime example not to follow. It is just some of it you can't avoid. We all have technical difficulty and get kicked out and have to come back on. And some of it, you know, some of it is under our control. And so what is under our control, we should work on. Thank you for that comment. Anybody else?
Well, we all know all the Troy students already have great etiquette. So I think this just helps them hone those skills a little bit more. But I definitely want to take a moment to thank you two because this was not only fun, but great information. So if we could take a second to thank Dr. Lewis and Dr. Baggett for coming today and for helping us be more professional and understand decorum. Thank you very much. And this is, thank you. And in the true spirit of our virtual coffees, our Wednesday virtual coffees, feel free to stick around. We're going to stop the recording now, and our guests are welcome to stay or to go, but we stick around because it's our tradition. Anybody that has